was after being in jail for 6 months, they sent us, Peter and I, and Claire, to a super maximum federal security detention center, which is the hardest you can get. It is the most maximum security, supermax. That's it. And the idea is it's forced labor. And they don't just send like anybody that normally we would be sent to a camp. Teresa was sent to a camp eventually. And the reason is to force us to work. And what they the crew that's there, the inmates that are there to work, are people who are finishing a long sentence. They get sentenced to 10 years. They are going to get out in 8 with good time. And they have 2 years left on their sentence. So they send them to this place, and they force them to work, because if they refuse to work, they lose their good time. They got to do 2 extra years in jail. Or it's people who are suing the feds, suing the prison system. So it's basically people who are agitating them. They send them there as an extra punishment. So they sent Peter and I there, and the people who worked there had never met anybody who was there on a misdemeanor charge their entire time there. And they were shocked to find, not shocked, they're like, what, you're not on probation after this? You're not going to a halfway house after this? And the answer was no, we're not. I'm not. And what that told me is that civil disobedience and nonviolent civil disobedience, where you resist the government in a nonviolent way, in a very public way, and you speak out against them, works. Because they don't want anybody else to do it. And it's worked throughout history. How many people in here voted?
Voted?
Voted, yeah. How many of them are women? How many people do you realize, and I'm sure most of you do, that like hundreds of women went to jail, prison, over and over again to get the right to vote, where men just thought it was ridiculous, you know? Same thing, you know, with all these other unionizing and such, although that wasn't necessarily all completely nonviolent, but the women's movement was. A lot of people like look at me and they say, like, oh, we went to jail, you know, well, you have to be home for your family. You know, you've got 2 little boys. At the time I did the action, I only had a 6-month-old son. And I often wonder, you know, would they say that to a soldier who's going to Iraq? You know? Would they say that to somebody who's working in the news department of CNN who's going over there? Probably not. I faced absolutely no danger at all. I faced discomfort. And being a white male in this country, from middle class, of privilege, basically, you know, the chances of me being harmed, as opposed to somebody else who's Spanish speaking from from Mexico was there with, or wherever, you know, it's exaggerated for them. Being somebody of privilege, I feel that I have a responsibility to actually take these actions, and which are nonviolent and harm no one. We had a tribunal in Binghamton during the trial, because we couldn't. What we were trying to do in the trials were put the war in Iraq on trial, and under international law, it states that when you know that your Article 6, Section 4 in the Constitution says, when you know your government is doing something that is illegal and you do nothing to prevent it, you are culpable in that crime. It's from after World War II, where I was following orders, or there was nothing I could do. I knew about it, but I couldn't do anything about it. The fact that you did, at least, if you don't at least try, you're guilty too. And so that's part of it. And the reason it's legal, and our defense is because, again, Article 6, Section 4 of the Constitution reads, international law is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes all state, local, and county laws. So we have treaties with other countries, from the Nuremberg tribunals and the Tokyo ones after Japanese surrender, which state that you need to, if your government's doing something illegal, do something about it. And then there's another law called, and basically what is normally seen as illegal is not when it's done to prevent a greater harm. So that gives us the right to go in there. And when you see the blood on the walls, it looks illegal. It looks like, okay, they broke the law. It looks like they caused damage or harm, but not when it's done to prevent a greater harm. When you see a fire truck go flying through that red light, you don't think for a second that they did something wrong or they broke the law. You know, so that was our defense. During the tribunal, so we had our defense, which was denied in the courtroom. In the evenings, what we did was we put the war on trial. We had speakers come in. We have a copy of it. It was all videotaped. A 5-night tribunal where we had speakers come in, and we basically did and put on the people that we wanted to put on the stand in front of everybody in the community. And we invited conscientious objectors, and one of the things that for me was just very powerful for the positive thing is we had somebody who was a soldier in Iraq at this war, who was a conscientious objector, go on Fox affiliate in Binghamton, New York, Fox News, and say every time I point a rifle, and my rifle, at an Iraqi child, I'm creating another terrorism. We're causing more terrorism, and this is from somebody who's actually been there. And you know, how much is that worth? How much jail time is that worth to get that on TV? A year ago, you know, we were still pro-war in this country, and very much so. I mean, it was starting to move a little bit, but everybody didn't know that everybody was thinking the same way. And in Binghamton, Matt Ryan was running for mayor, and he marched with us, and he was completely destroyed by the people he was running against in the primary. And they just keep hammering him down. And the media, which is like pro-Lockheed Martin, because it's the biggest employer in town, IBM, all of those folks just really cut him apart. And he won overwhelmingly. And so, and he was able to distinguish himself against the others. Because he was, talking about the Bush administration and how damaging they are in this country. Many more positive things that have actually happened to me in jail. Communicating with, I hung out with the imam, the Muslims, trying to talk to him as a Christian and get some communication and find some more understanding between the two cultures that we had there. And I was able to go to Juna a little bit. I went about 5 times. They have it on Friday, and that was great. I came in as a Christian and sat in the back, and that was terrific. And what I can tell you is very similar. They're their stories, but the messages are always the same. One week was funny. One week we went in, and he said, "Dad," and I said, "I agreed to go." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you coming? Are you coming?" I said, "Yes, Muhammad." That was his name. And he goes, "I'm good, because I'm doing the one on sex this week." I'm like, "Oh God." Anyway, but coming out of that, I mean, he did this whole thing on the Muslim law on sex, and my mother could have written it, the Irish Catholic that she is. It's the same thing. It's the same teachings, and there's so many things that we have in common, and that we can find common ground on. And that was a lot. And he got swept up in 9/11. He was an imam in Newark, New Jersey, and he was thrown in jail, and he was like totally tortured. They thought he was a terrorist. So who knows what they did to him? He talked a little bit about it, but didn't want to talk a lot about it. They kept him there without charge. And then after a year, they finally hit him with a charge because they were going to have to release him, and they got 5 years in jail. And so he's going to be deported back to Pakistan when he's done. And when he goes back to Pakistan, instead of having just the horror story, at least he can say that he met me and Peter, and bring back a little bit that we're not all that way. And how much time in jail is that worth, And so a little bit of time. I don't know how, if anybody here is a parent, my guess is yes. But I think of all the kids in Iraq, and I think, until you have kids, you really don't know how much your parents love you. And so when I think about how I care about my kids and how much, my sons, and I mean, it's just really great. And to think that, all these kids in Iraq are getting killed, and their counterpart in Iraq are getting killed, And for me to be able to talk to my son and say, you're a part of this now. You're helping these kids maybe bring the war to an end a day or a minute sooner. And that's a great lesson I can give them. I'm privileged to be able to go to jail. I'm privileged that my family supported me. I was privileged that somehow all the fundraising paid for the mortgage every month, and I got letters from all over the world.